The Legend of Jigong Chapter 60.
The text opens by bringing two characters, Lei Ming and Shen Lang, to a place called Xiaoyue village, or Xiaoyue.
Right.
As they're walking, they spot another figure, Hua Yunlong. But then the narrative does very deliberate bait and switch right here.
Yeah, it completely pivots.
It introduces these characters and then essentially just shelves them. The text zooms out to focus on the village itself. If the Ma family, who controls this village, are the apex predators holding all the real power, their absolute silence and their camouflage become the actual story.
What's fascinating here is that Xiaoyue Village is a masterpiece of environmental deception. I mean, if you were a casual traveler passing through, you would see a perfectly normal, moderately prosperous agricultural community.
Just farms and local shops, right?
Exactly. You'd see wealthy landowners managing their estates, local businesses operating, people going to the temple. But the subterranean reality of Xiaoyue Village is that its socioeconomic bedrock is built entirely by retired, highly lethal operatives from the Jianghu.
Okay, wait, I want to pause on that term, the Jianghu, because understanding that is crucial for everything that follows.
Oh, absolutely.
It literally translates to rivers and lakes, but it's not geographical, is it?
No, not at all. It's sociological. The Jianghu is essentially a parallel society overlaid onto normal society. It is the underworld, but not strictly in the modern sense of, like, organized crime.
But what is it exactly?
It's the realm of wanderers, martial artists, outlaws, bodyguards, thieves, mercenaries. They operate outside the strict purview of imperial law. They're governed instead by their own incredibly rigid codes of brotherhood, vengeance, and reputation.
Wow.
And to survive in the Jianghu requires a level of physical competence and situational awareness that the average citizen simply cannot fathom.
Which brings us to the patriarch of Xiaoyue village, Ma Yuanzhang. The text introduces him with a title that carries immense weight. He's called the Thousand-Li Lone Walker.
Just a phenomenal nickname.
Right. He is an old martial arts hero who roamed the Jianghu for decades.
Yeah.
But the detail that jumps out is that despite his lethal capabilities, he callously refused to ever join the Greenwoods.
And that decision tells us everything we need to know about his psychology and his operational strategy.
How so?
Well, the Greenwoods represents the formalized syndicate of outlaws and bandits. They have fortresses, hierarchies, massive networks. Joining them offers protection and logistical support, but, and this is key, it comes at the cost of autonomy and visibility.
Because if you're in the syndicate, people know who you are.
Exactly. If you are part of the Greenwoods, the imperial military has a file on you. By refusing to join, Ma Yuanzhang is choosing the path of a highly lethal freelancer.
That makes sense, but man, it also implies a staggering level of self-reliance. I mean, if you are a freelancer in a world without digital banking or modern communication, you have zero safety net.
Right.
If you get injured, there is no syndicate doctor coming to patch you up.
Exactly the point. To survive as the Thousand-Li Lone Walker, his skills had to be so overwhelmingly superior that he never needed the syndicate. And that level of isolation breeds a fierce paranoia regarding his intellectual property.
His martial arts techniques.
Yes. His kinetic knowledge is his only capital. The text is very clear that he refuses to take on disciples from the outside world. He guards his techniques like a state secret, ultimately only passing them down to his two nephews. He's keeping the power strictly consolidated within the bloodline.
And he enforces this culture of absolute secrecy on his subordinates as well, doesn't he? The text introduces two men who served under him, Gao King, known in the Jianghu as the flower-seeking knight, and Zulan, the little white tiger.
Again, names designed to strike fear into people on the road.
But what are they actually doing in Xiaoyue village? They have successfully laundered their identities. They are just wealthy property owners now.
Which is brilliant.
The text explicitly points out that the local villagers have absolutely zero idea that the guys complaining about property taxes or, discussing crop yields possess the ability to snap a man's neck with their bare hands.
Consider the psychological discipline required to maintain that facade.
Right. It's like finding out your boring, wealthy suburban neighbors are actually retired black ops agents.
It is a highly sophisticated survival strategy. True power doesn't need to strut. The most dangerous people in this environment are the ones who have deliberately erased their own threatening aura. They are mimicking the baseline behavior of the local gentry so perfectly that the camouflage becomes their reality.
But maintaining that camouflage, maintaining that extreme discipline, clearly takes a psychological toll. Because even a legend like the Thousand-Li Lone Walker eventually hits a wall.
He does, yeah.
The text details how Ma Yuanzhang becomes completely disillusioned with the secular world and that constant, hypervigilant wandering. He decides he wants peace. So he takes his family's property, the Bilu Temple, turns it into his personal retreat, and declares himself a monk.
It's a fascinating pivot, but we really have to look at the mechanics of this transformation, because he adopts the aesthetic of monastic life without adopting the substance.
What do you mean?
Well, the text notes specifically that he didn't take formal vows, and he doesn't possess any deep understanding of Buddhist esoteric mysteries. He just likes reading scriptures.
Oh, so he's basically cosplaying as a monk because he likes the quiet room and the smell of the incense.
Angela, yes.
He wants the cultural assumption of peace that comes with the robes, but he hasn't actually done the internal spiritual work.
Which is why the experiment is destined to fail. And what's fascinating here is how this reflects a very common modern trope. We see this psychological pattern constantly today.
Like what?
Think about the high-powered executive who burns out, sells everything, and moves to a cabin in the woods to find inner peace.
Oh, sure.
Only to realize 6 months later that they brought all their unresolved restlessness with them to the woods. The stillness becomes deafening. Ma Yuanzhang's nervous system was forged in the life-or-death stakes of the Jianghu. Reading scriptures in a quiet temple doesn't rewire a lifetime of hypervigilance.
So the inevitable happens. He gets incredibly bored.
Yeah.
The aesthetic of peace isn't enough to sustain him. He ends up abandoning the temple, leaving it in the capable hands of his retired Black Ops subordinates, the property owners, and he simply vanishes back into the wandering life.
Right.
But his departure creates a massive vacuum in the family structure. The business of maintaining the Ma family's wealth and status falls entirely on the shoulders of one of the nephews he trained, Ma Jing.
Ma Jing is just a brilliantly constructed character. His Jianghu nicknames are the Iron-Faced Yaksha and the Black Tiger, which refers to his dark, intimidating physical presence.
Yeah.
But his approach to the family business is a masterclass in compartmentalization and logistical pragmatism.
I am frankly obsessed with the logistics of Ma Jing's operation, because he isn't just managing the local farms. Once a year, Ma Jing leaves Xiaoyue village to, as the text says, do business. And this business requires him to travel an astonishing 800 to 1,000 miles away.
Let's really break down the reality of an 800 to 1,000-mile journey in pre-industrial China.
Okay.
And this isn't a quick flight. This is months of hard travel over brutal terrain, navigating different regional dialects, weather systems, local jurisdictions. The sheer caloric and logistical effort required to project power that far away is immense.
And what is he doing when he finally gets there? He is operating as a high-end, highly specialized thief. But he's not picking pockets in the market. He is systematically targeting corrupt officials, deeply wealthy families, and large-scale merchants. He hits these high-value, well-guarded targets, strips them of their silver, and then transports that silver all the way back to Xiaoyue village on trains of loaded mules.
And that geographical distance is the crucial component of his operational security.
Why is that?
By placing 1,000 miles between his crimes and his home, he completely insulates his domestic identity. The officials he robs have no jurisdictional reach into his province.
I see.
The local magistrate in Xiaoyue village just sees a prosperous, upstanding citizen who occasionally travels for trade. He is aggressively ensuring that he never soils his own nest.
The psychological rationalization he uses to bridge those two identities is arguably the most brilliant part of his character. When he returns from these months-long raids dragging literal mules weighed down with stolen silver, his neighbors naturally ask questions.
Of course they do.
They say, "Ma Jing, where have you been? Where on earth did you get all this wealth?" And he has a perfectly rehearsed, entirely sanitized response. He tells them, "Oh, I was just out collecting rent."
Collecting rent. It is a stunning piece of linguistic manipulation.
It really is.
By deploying that specific euphemism, he accomplishes two things simultaneously. First, he gives the neighbors an answer that fits within the bounds of legitimate aristocratic behavior. Wealthy people collect rent. It immediately shuts down further inquiry.
Right.
But secondly, and more importantly, he is laundering his own conscience.
I see where you're going with that. It implies he doesn't view himself as a criminal.
He absolutely does not. If we examine the targets of his raids, corrupt officials and massive merchants, these are people who, in the cultural consciousness of the peasantry, likely acquired their vast wealth through exploitation, bribery, or crushing taxation.
So it's justified in his head.
Exactly. Ma Jing has adopted a Robin Hood-esque moral framework, but without the charitable distribution at the end. In his mind, he isn't stealing. He is performing a forceful, righteous audit. He is collecting rent from people who have extracted unearned wealth from the world. He views the silver as a tax that he is personally authorized to levy.
Man, that reframes the entire concept of corporate euphemisms for me. I really want you, the listener, to sit with that parallel. Because how often do we see this exact same psychological mechanism today?
All the time.
We invent sterile, bureaucratic language to sanitize behavior that, if described plainly, would be morally deeply uncomfortable.
Right, like a company doesn't destroy thousands of livelihoods to pad the quarterly margins.
No, they engage in strategic downsizing or, organizational restructuring.
Exactly.
Mojing is the CEO of a violent criminal enterprise, but he uses the polite terminology of real estate management to ensure his neighbors smile at him and, more importantly, to ensure he can still look at himself in the mirror.
It is a perfectly balanced, albeit deeply cynical ecosystem. The true predators of Xiaoyue village maintain their power through invisibility and linguistic camouflage. But nature abhors a vacuum.
Yes, it does.
When the people with actual lethal competence deliberately hide their capabilities, it leaves the public square empty. And into that empty space steps an entirely different breed of martial artist.
This transition in the narrative is where the text shifts from a study of hidden power to a biting, frankly hilarious critique of performative incompetence. We are entering the grifter economy of martial arts.
It's quite the tonal shift.
Because an ecosystem built on silence inevitably attracts parasites who want the social benefits of power without paying the physical price to acquire it. The bridge between the deadly silent Ma family and this loud, incompetent grifter economy is a character named Li Ping.
Li Ping is the structural linchpin of this entire social dynamic. His Jianghu nickname is the Mountaineering Leopard, which sounds impressive, but his actual skill level is what makes his position so fascinating.
He's not a master, right?
Yeah. Well, he is Ma Jing's one legitimate local friend. And the text provides a very specific metric. Li Ping has managed to learn roughly 50% of Ma Jing's skills.
Okay, let's analyze that 50%. He is not a transcendent master. He isn't out there robbing caravans. But he isn't a fraud either.
No, absolutely not.
If you put him in a normal fight against average people, his kinetic grounding, his balance, and his striking power are vastly superior. In the confined pond of Xiaoyue village, having half the skill of an apex predator makes you functionally untouchable.
He occupies that dangerous middle ground. He possesses enough legitimate violence to command absolute respect from the local civilian population, but he lacks the elite discipline of someone like Ma Jing.
Right.
And because he isn't operating on Ma's high-stakes level, he has the free time and the inclination to monetize his reputation locally.
And the mechanism for that monetization is his family business. Li Ping's brother runs a wine shop situated just outside the village. And this specific location becomes the watering hole, the social hub for a dozen local hooligans, the wannabe tough guys.
The sociology of this group is crucial. The text refers to them as guanggun, which translates roughly to bear sticks.
Bear sticks, I love that.
In this context, it means hooligans, bullies, local ruffians. These are young men who have no real trade, no real wealth, and absolutely no internal discipline. What they crave is the aesthetic of danger. They want the villagers to cross the street when they walk by. They want the fear.
Because fear is a currency. If people are afraid of you, you don't have to wait in line. You don't have to follow the social rules. And the way they try to manifest this fear is through wildly inflated self-branding.
Oh, the names.
The text lists their nicknames, and it reads like a parody of Jianghu legends. They call themselves the Flat Heaven Spinner, the Sky-Filling Flyer, the Heart-Turning Wolf, the Black-Hearted Wolf, the Street-Filling Wolf, and the Flower-Tailed Wolf. It's a literal pack of self-titled wolves.
It is the historical equivalent of teenagers assigning themselves terrifying usernames in an online video game while sitting safely in a suburban basement. The nicknames are a psychological shield against their own profound mediocrity. By calling himself the Black-Hearted Wolf, a fundamentally lazy, unremarkable young man is demanding that the world treat him as a threat.
Which is wild.
And the text explicitly states their motivation. Ordinary people practice martial arts to strengthen their bodies and improve their health. This gang practices solely to act like thugs.
I act like Guanggun.
Right. They're learning how to strike aggressive poses, how to scowl, and how to swing weapons around to create a localized zone of intimidation.
But to legitimize their cosplay, they need a stage and they need a director. So they take over a ruined local sanctuary, the Three Sovereigns Temple, or Sanwang Temple, and they set it up as their martial arts practice ground. And who do they invite to be their master? Li Ping.
What?
The guy with 50% of the real skills.
And this is where we have to unpack the underlying economic reality of the situation. Why would a man who possesses genuine lethal capability degrade himself by associating with a dozen loud, incompetent frauds?
What's his angle?
What is Li Ping getting out of this arrangement?
At first glance, it makes no sense. He knows they are clowns. But the text provides the financial mechanism. These wolves are essentially local parasites. Because they have successfully cultivated this aura of unpredictable aggression, the ordinary villagers are terrified of them.
Right.
The gang roams around the village, eating at restaurants, drinking at taverns, and simply refusing to pay. The local merchants are too intimidated to demand the money. They are dine and dash experts.
They operate everywhere with total impunity, except at one specific location. They never skip the bill at Li Ping's brother's wine shop.
That is the whole game right there.
Exactly. The gang knows on a primal level that Li Ping's violence isn't performative. They know that if they tried to cheat his brother, Li Ping would physically dismantle them. So Li Ping's brother's wine shop becomes the only establishment in the region where these dozen deadbeats actually function as paying customers.
So Li Ping isn't just hanging out with them for fun. He is running a highly sophisticated passive protection racket. I want to compare this to modern business models to really lock in how clever this is.
Go for it.
It is essentially a loss leader or a freemium marketing strategy. Li Ping donates his time at the ruined temple. He tolerates their ridiculous nicknames. He strokes their egos and lets them call him master. That is his overhead cost.
Right.
In exchange, he captures 100% of their disposable income, ensuring a steady, guaranteed revenue stream for his family's business. He is converting his martial arts credibility directly into bar tabs.
It is a brilliantly cynical ecosystem. The thugs get the proximity to Li Ping's legitimate reputation, which boosts their intimidation factor in the village. Li Ping gets the financial security for his brother.
Everyone wins.
Everyone is fully aware of the transactional nature of their relationship, even if it remains unspoken. They tolerate the clowns because the circus pays the rent.
I guarantee every single person listening has encountered this exact dynamic in their professional life. Think about that mid-level manager who tolerates a deeply toxic, loud, utterly incompetent vendor or client.
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone in the office knows the client is a fraud who produces terrible work. But the manager smiles, nods, and invites them to the golf course. Why? Because that specific client brings in a guaranteed baseline budget every single quarter. You suppress your desire for competence in exchange for financial predictability. Li Ping is just doing it with broadswords instead of spreadsheets.
But ecosystems built on cynical pragmatism and mutual delusion are inherently fragile. They require everyone to maintain the lie. If even one person decides to stress test the illusion, the entire structure collapses.
And that brings us to the introduction of a catalyst who shatters this delicate balance.
Right.
We are moving from the comedy of the grifter economy into a high-stakes study of social sabotage and the incredibly volatile nature of ego. The narrative introduces a character known only as the strategist, or Junshi. Now, the strategist is one of the thugs, but he possesses a dangerous trait. He is slightly more observant than the rest of the pack.
He has enough analytical capacity to recognize the ceiling of their current arrangement. He watches Li Ping practice, and he realizes that while Li Ping is good enough to beat them, he is not a transcendent master.
Right.
The strategist understands that their gang's borrowed authority is a depreciating asset. He tells the others the master is incompetent, so the disciples are muddy.
Muddy is such a great descriptive word there. It implies their reputation is murky, lacking the crisp, terrifying clarity of true Xiaoyue legends. The strategist realizes that to elevate their own status in the village, they need a bigger, more frightening shield to hide behind.
So what does he do?
He proposes a pivot. He suggests they abandon Li Ping and invite the most dangerous man they know of, Ma Jing, the iron-faced yaksha, to be their new master at the ruined temple.
It is a breathtakingly arrogant proposition, driven entirely by their collective lack of metacognition. They see Ma Jing's dark face and massive frame, and they know his vague reputation, but they have absolutely no comprehension of the reality of his life.
Not at all.
They are local bullies deciding they want to hire a special forces operative to teach them how to look tough at the mall.
But they commit to the bit. They go to Ma Jing's house, and they attempt to utilize the formal protocols of the Xiaoyue. They bring red and white formal greeting cards, they assemble at his gate, trying to project respectability, and Ma Jing comes out to meet them.
And we really have to analyze Ma Jing's internal calculus in this moment. He is a man whose entire freedom and physical safety relies on his ability to fly under the radar of the imperial authorities.
Right, because he's a thief.
His wealth is derived from robbing the elites 1,000 miles away. The absolute last thing a high-stakes thief needs is to be publicly associated with a dozen loud, obnoxious, highly visible local criminals who draw attention everywhere they go.
It's a nightmare for him.
It is a catastrophic operational security risk. His internal monologue is very clear. Associating with these low-rent thugs will actively destroy his carefully curated camouflage.
But this is where the cultural nuances of the setting dictate behavior. Because, if you or I were in that situation, we might just say, get off my lawn, I'm not interested, don't ever come back.
But Ma Jing doesn't do that.
No, he cannot afford to be openly hostile, because open hostility creates enemies, and enemies create noise. He needs the village to remain utterly placid. So he deploys the most culturally unassailable, socially polite excuse available.
It's so good.
He looks at them with deep regret and says, I'm so honored by your invitation. I would truly love to teach you all. But tragically, my elderly mother is terribly ill. I simply cannot leave her side.
It is the perfect defensive maneuver. In a society deeply rooted in Confucian filial piety, caring for a sick parent supersedes all other social or professional obligations.
You can't argue with it.
It is a bulletproof rejection. The thugs cannot argue, they cannot feel insulted, and Ma Jing preserves both his operational security and the social harmony of the village. He gracefully closes the door without leaving a scratch on anyone's ego.
But the reality is, the gang is still rejected. They return to the ruined temple feeling utterly deflated. The grand plan failed. And predictably, the pack mentality turns inward. They immediately turn on the strategist.
Of course they do.
They blame him for making them look foolish, for organizing this failed expedition. The strategist's social standing within the gang plummets in a matter of minutes.
And this is where we see the mechanics of social manipulation at its most toxic. The strategist is backed into a corner. To salvage his own reputation within the group, he needs a scapegoat. He needs to distract the pack.
Right.
And he decides the most effective way to save his own skin is to completely destroy the social standing of their former master, Li Ping.
The interaction that follows is a masterclass in weaponizing insecurity. Let's trace exactly how the strategist executes this trap. Li Ping arrives at the temple for their normal training session, completely oblivious to the fact that his students just tried to replace him. The strategist approaches him and casually drops a conversational landmine. He says, "Oh, Master Li, by the way, we went over to visit Ma Jing today to pay our respects. And naturally, your name came up."
Notice the deliberate framing there. The strategist doesn't start with the insult. He simply introduces the variable of Ma Jing into the conversation, knowing exactly how Li Ping will react.
Right, because Li Ping instantly takes the bait. He puffs up his chest. He views his proximity to Ma Jing as his greatest asset, so he immediately reinforces it. He says, "Oh, of course. Ma Jing and I are best friends. We are like hands and feet. We are practically brothers." Li Ping is laying all of his social chips on the table.
Which is exactly what the strategist needs him to do. The strategist forces Li Ping to publicly declare the immense value of that relationship. And once the value is declared, the strategist destroys it.
He drops the hammer. The strategist looks at Li Ping, surrounded by all the thugs, and lies directly to his face. He says, "Well, that is incredibly strange. Because when I mentioned your name, Ma Jing seemed confused. He barely remembered who you were."
It's so ruthless.
And then the strategist fabricates a devastating, highly specific quote. He claims, Ma Jing said, "Even if we recognize each other from living in the same village for 30 years, we don't really have much of a friendship."
It is a surgical strike aimed precisely at the structural integrity of Li Ping's identity.
But this is where my modern brain screams in frustration. Why does Li Ping instantly lose his mind? He flies into a blind, screaming rage. Why doesn't he employ even a fraction of critical thinking?
It's hard to watch.
He knows the strategist is a manipulative grifter. Why doesn't he just pause, take a breath, and say, I highly doubt my lifelong friend said that. I'm going to go have a quiet cup of tea with Ma Jing and ask him what really happened. Why does he bypass logic entirely?
Because applying logic in that moment fundamentally misunderstands the cultural and psychological physics of face, the concept of mianzi. To a Western audience, or a modern audience, we often reduce face to mere embarrassment or hurt pride. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, In the ecosystem of the Jianghu and in highly structured traditional societies, mianzi is a tangible, vital currency. It is your credit score, your physical deterrence, and your social survival all woven into one fabric.
It's the armor that keeps you safe.
Precisely. In a pre-industrial village without a formalized police force ready to intervene in local disputes, your safety relies entirely on the perception that you are too dangerous or too well-connected to be messed with.
Ah, I see.
Li Ping's entire public standing, his ability to cow these 12 thugs into paying for their wine, relies absolutely on the perception that he is intimately bonded to the apex predator, Ma Jing.
That reframes the entire confrontation for me. If we assume that reputation is literal armor, then the strategist didn't just insult Li Ping. He walked up and unbuckled Li Ping's armor in front of a pack of wolves.
Exactly. The empirical truth of whether Ma Jing actually spoke those words is entirely secondary. It simply doesn't matter. What matters is that the gang heard the strategist say it, and the seed of doubt has been planted in the public square. If Li Ping walks away to quietly verify the truth, he looks weak. He looks hesitant. His face has been damaged publicly, which means the repair must be equally public, immediate, and overwhelmingly forceful.
He is trapped by the absolute necessity of maintaining the illusion of dominance. So Li Ping abandons all rationality. He storms across the village to Ma Jing's house. He is so consumed by the need to restore his social credit that he bypasses all the polite protocols the gang just tried to use.
He just bursts in.
He bursts through the doors, doesn't knock, doesn't offer greetings. He confronts the most dangerous man in the region and starts screaming about what the strategist said.
And Ma Jing, because he possesses the emotional regulation of a true professional, instantly diagnoses the situation. He doesn't get angry at Li Ping's intrusion. He sees the machinery of the trap.
What does he do?
He calmly tells Li Ping, "Brother, stop. He's just goading you. The strategist is manipulating you to cause a rift. Ignore it." Ma Jing is attempting to offer Li Ping a rational off-ramp.
But Li Ping is too far gone. He literally rejects the truth. He says, I don't care if he is goading me. I don't care if it's a lie. Because the truth cannot repair his public standing. Only a public spectacle can do that.
Right.
Li Ping demands that Ma Jing come to the ruined temple the next day. He demands that Ma Jing put on a martial arts demonstration in front of the thugs. He says he needs Ma Jing to do this simply to turn his face around, to restore his reputation by publicly validating their friendship. He is demanding that a lethal, covert operative perform like a circus bear just to prove to a bunch of deadbeats that Li Ping is important.
It highlights the ultimate vulnerability of being part of a society. Even a lone wolf is bound by the cultural dictates of brotherhood. Which brings us to a crucial question. Ma Jing is vastly superior to Li Ping. He could easily refuse. He could throw Li Ping out of his courtyard. Why on earth does he agree to this absurd demand?
Yeah, it seems completely counter to his entire philosophy of hiding.
It is. But he agrees because Li Ping has effectively weaponized the very same social conventions that Ma Jing used to reject the gang. By invoking the bond of brotherhood and claiming intense social distress, Li Ping has trapped him.
Wow.
To refuse a desperate, direct plea for help from a recognized friend would be to violate the core ethical code of the Jianghu. If Ma Jing refuses, he proves the strategist right. He is forced, against every survival instinct he has honed over the decades, to step out of the shadows to patch the fragile ego of his friend.
Which sets the stage for one of the most painfully funny, sharply observed sequences I have ever encountered in literature. We are about to witness a collision of worlds. The absolute pinnacle of covert, lethal competence is walking straight into the epicenter of unearned performative arrogance.
Oh, it's brilliant.
We are going to watch the Dunning-Kruger effect play out in real time with deadly weapons in the courtyard of a ruined temple.
It is vital to define the mechanics of the Dunning-Kruger effect before we look at the demonstrations.
Please do.
It is a cognitive bias, yes, but specifically, it is a deficit of metacognition. It describes a state where an individual's competence in a specific domain is so profoundly low that they lack the foundational knowledge required to even recognize how bad they are.
They don't know what they don't know.
Exactly. Their ignorance forms an impenetrable shield around their ego. Because they don't know what good technique looks like, they assume their flailing is brilliant.
And oh boy, are we about to see some flailing. The next day, Ma Jing honors his commitment. He arrives at the Sanhuang Temple. The gang of thugs, believing their manipulation worked, go into full sycophantic overdrive.
They're thrilled.
They treat this man like visiting royalty. They are brewing the best tea, buying expensive snacks, pulling up chairs. The text beautifully describes them acting like stars surrounding the moon. They have meticulously lined up all 18 classic martial arts weapons in racks in front of the main hall. They are setting a theatrical stage.
And they are completely unaware that the man drinking their tea views them as a biological hazard. They think they are hosting a peer review.
The grand illusion commences. The thugs decide they need to prove their worth to the new master, so they take turns demonstrating their routines. I have to break down the physical reality of what happens here because the contrast between the names of their routines and their actual execution is staggering.
It really is.
First up is Hu Dei, the black-hearted wolf, who performs a barehanded fist routine. Next is Xiaoyue, the flat heaven spinner who grabs a single broadsword.
Now, a single broadsword is a weapon that requires immense core stability and footwork. The blade is heavy, and if you just swing it with your arm, the momentum of the steel will literally pull your spine out of alignment and drag you off balance.
Exactly the visual. Now imagine Ren Shun, the sky fling flyer, who decides to demonstrate with the large sword, essentially a guandao, a massive polearm with a heavy blade on the end, historically designed to chop the legs off charging cavalry horses. It requires a flawless, whole-body kinetic chain to wield without collapsing under its weight. Ren Shun is out there just heaving this massive piece of iron around the courtyard using sheer, uncoordinated muscle.
Just a disaster waiting to happen.
Following him, Xiaoyue, the white-spotted snake, attempts a flower spear routine. The spear is about precision, tight circles, and snapping power. Xiaoyue is likely just violently poking the air, leaving his entire body exposed with every thrust. And finally, Zhu Xiyuan, the wolf badger, finishes with a straight sword routine.
The physical chaos in that courtyard would be palpable. You have 5 men who have never experienced the sobering reality of a legitimate fight to the death, swinging lethal, heavy weaponry with maximum adrenaline and absolutely zero kinetic understanding.
Right.
They are panting, their stances are wide and unstable, their strikes have no grounded power.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The most incredible part is the ritual that happens after every single routine. The thug finishes, likely sweating profusely and gasping for air, lowers his weapon, turns to Ma Jing, and earnestly asks, "Master, how was that? May I have your feedback?"
This is where the text gives us access to Ma Jing's internal processing. He is sitting there sipping tea, watching this biomechanical disaster unfold.
Inside his head, Ma Jing's critique is merciless. The text gives us his exact internal monologue. Swords don't look like swords. Spears don't look like spears. He recognizes instantly that this isn't just poor technique. It's an insult to the physics of combat. It is fundamentally unteachable because the foundation is entirely rotten.
He recognizes the profound depth of their incompetence. But the true genius of Ma Jing's character is how he chooses to respond externally.
Out loud, Ma Jing doesn't offer a single correction. He doesn't tell them to fix their stance or adjust their grip. Instead, he unleashes a barrage of the most aggressively hyperbolic, outrageously sarcastic praise imaginable. He decides to validate their delusions at a nuclear level.
He weaponizes flattery.
He absolutely does. Let's look at the historical weight of his sarcasm. He looks at Ren Shun, the guy who was just clumsily heaving the massive guandao polearm around. Ma Jing says with a straight face, "Incredible. The large sword is the marshal of all weapons, and I must say, your skill with it is far superior to the legendary ancient generals Lian Po and Huang Zong."
We really have to unpack that comparison for the listener. Lian Po and Huang Zong are towering, almost mythical figures in Chinese military history, renowned specifically for their unmatched legendary prowess in battle, even into their old age.
So they're legends?
Legends. Comparing a sweating, off-balance street thug to the greatest military heroes of antiquity is an insult so massive it almost demands a telescope to see its edges.
But he doesn't stop there. He turns to Xiaoyue, the guy poking the air with the flower spear, and tells him that his spear work surpasses Xiaoyue.
Oh, wow.
Xiaoyue is the ultimate hero of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, famous for strapping an infant to his chest and fighting his way solo through an entire opposing army using his spear. Ma Jing tells a local bully that he is better than the patron saint of spear combat.
It's unbelievable.
Finally, he looks at Zhu Xiyuan, the guy with the straight sword, and says, "Magnificent. Your sword routine is so flawless you could have easily attended the legendary Hongmen banquet."
No, the Hongmen banquet is a brilliant historical pull. It refers to one of the most famous tension-filled events in Chinese history, where a highly choreographed sword dance was used as a cover for a political assassination attempt between rival warlords.
Right.
It represents the absolute pinnacle of lethal tension, precision, and high-stakes martial arts. Ma Jing is telling a guy who can barely hold a sword that he belongs in the room where history was violently forged.
The irony is so thick it has its own gravitational pull. But what is truly staggering is the thug's reaction. Because of the Dunning-Kruger effect, they lack the capacity to detect the sarcasm. They literally absorb this absurd praise as empirical fact.
They believe it.
The text shows one of the thugs nodding his head and thinking internally, "Ah, yes, I knew it. My skills are finally complete." They swallow the hook entirely.
It is a stunning display of psychological aikido by Ma Jing. He uses the overwhelming force of their own bloated egos to neutralize them, but it raises a profound ethical and pedagogical question. Ma Jing is, undeniably, a master. The traditional role of a master is to correct, to discipline, and to guide.
So why doesn't he?
Right, why does he deliberately lie to them? Why does he feed their delusion instead of tearing it down and building them back up properly?
I found myself struggling with that exact question. It almost feels cruel. If he knows they're doing it wrong, shouldn't he fix it?
It feels cruel until you calculate the immense emotional and temporal labor required to tell the truth in that scenario. Consider what would happen if Ma Jing offered a genuine critique.
Chaos, probably.
Exactly. If he tells them their footwork is garbage and their strikes are weak, he shatters their fragile identities. They will become defensive, angry, and argumentative. He would then have to spend hours deconstructing their bad habits, managing their emotional outbursts, and painstakingly teaching them how to stand properly. That is years of grueling, thankless work.
And he has zero interest in investing years of his life into local deadbeats.
Exactly. By praising them to the absolute heavens, Ma Jing seals them inside an airtight bubble of their own ignorance. He effectively guarantees that they will never ask him for actual instruction ever again, because he has officially declared them to be perfect. Wow. He is utilizing validation as an eradication strategy. He is protecting his time, his energy, and his operational security by simply telling them exactly what their egos are desperate to hear.
That is a staggering realization. And again, the modern parallels are everywhere. How often do we engage in this exact behavior to avoid friction?
Oh, all the time.
You are in a high-stakes meeting, and a colleague presents a strategic plan that is fundamentally flawed. It makes no logical sense. But instead of dissecting the flaws and enduring the inevitable conflict and the emotional labor of a 2-hour argument, the entire room just nods, smiles, and says, "Great initiative, very innovative."
Right, you validate the incompetence simply to make the meeting end faster.
It is the path of least resistance.
It is a ubiquitous social survival mechanism.
Right.
But while letting a bad marketing plan slide might just cost a company some money, in the physical world of martial arts, allowing someone to believe they are a lethal weapon when they are actually incompetent is incredibly dangerous.
They'll get them killed.
Exactly. Ma Jing is passively letting them walk toward a cliff. When these thugs eventually encounter someone who actually knows how to fight, their artificially inflated confidence will get them severely injured or killed.
The narrative seems to recognize that danger, because the comedy of the fake masters ends abruptly right after this. The text pivots sharply back to reality, ensuring the audience remembers the stakes of this world. We get a brutal contrast between the performative flailing of the gang and the terrifying reality of true kinetic mastery.
The juxtaposition is structurally necessary. The author has shown us the counterfeit currency. Now we must see the genuine gold.
Having successfully neutralized the thugs with sarcasm, Ma Jing turns his attention back to Li Ping, the man who dragged him into this mess. He says, "All right, Li Ping, I've taught you a bit over the years. Step up and show them what you can do."
And Li Ping steps up.
Yes, Li Ping, desperate to validate his own position and prove he isn't completely useless, steps into the courtyard to perform the Taizu Divine Fist.
It is crucial to note that the Taizu Divine Fist is not a flashy acrobatic dance. It is a highly traditional, grounded, and intensely practical martial arts form named after the founding emperor of the Song dynasty. It is built entirely on generating power from the earth up through the body.
The text details the sequence with these incredibly evocative poetic names. I want to emphasize the violent kinetic flow implied here. He opens with the welcoming door blade, transitions into the sweeping ground dragon, unleashes a flurry of 12 linked fists. He executes moves called beating the South Mountain Tiger and kicking the North Sea Dragon.
It's relentless.
It is a continuous, unbroken chain of coordinated, balanced violence.
But the poetry of the names is secondary to the physical diagnostics the text provides at the end of the routine. The author is very deliberate in showing us the biomechanical markers of true competence.
Yes, this is the most telling detail. When Li Ping finishes this explosive, highly aerobic routine, he stops. and the text notes specifically that he is not breathing hard. His face hasn't flushed or changed color. He isn't gasping or wiping sweat from his brow like the thugs were. His internal cardiovascular system and his kinetic efficiency are so high that a lethal sequence of strikes barely elevates his resting heart rate. He is in total, terrifying control of his physical vessel.
That lack of physiological distress is the ultimate proof of his 50% mastery. He demonstrates unequivocally that the gap between him and the thugs is a chasm. He restores his face not through posturing, but through undeniable physical reality. And even the deluded thugs recognize it. They're forced to admit there are no weak soldiers under a strong general.
But the demonstration awakens a hunger in the courtyard. The gang has seen the apprentice. Now they are desperate to see the master. They begin begging Ma Jing to demonstrate his legendary signature weapons, his dual maces.
The dual maces, or shuangjian, are a very specific class of weapon in Chinese martial arts. They are not bladed swords meant for slicing.
What are they?
They are heavy, solid metal rods, often ribbed or faceted, designed specifically to crush armor, shatter bones, and destroy incoming weapons. Wielding one effectively requires immense forearm strength and structural alignment. Wielding two simultaneously in a fluid kinetic pattern requires a level of ambidextrous coordination and counterbalancing momentum that is exponentially more difficult than using a single weapon.
Ma Jing looks at the crowd, calculates the moment, and decides, you know what? I'm going to open their eyes to what the Jianghu actually looks like. He picks up the heavy iron maces, asks for their forbearance, and steps into the center of the courtyard.
Oh, man.
What follows is a sequence that leaves the comedy entirely behind. It is breathtaking. He unleashes a torrent of steel. The moves are mythical in scale. Dual dragons swing tails, withered tree twists roots, white ape offers fruit, yin-yang maces, nightshade explores the sea, and finally a move so advanced it sounds astronomical, plucking stars to change the dipper.
Notice how the language of the text elevates. We move from the terrestrial strikes of Li Ping kicking tigers and sweeping dragons to the celestial, plucking stars to change the dipper. The author is signaling that Ma Jing operates on a plane of existence that the local villagers simply cannot access.
The sheer physics of the routine are staggering. The text describes the maces moving so fast they create a continuous roaring blur of iron. The heavy weapons are an extension of his will, flowing with a fluid, lethal grace that defies their weight.
And the crowd?
The crowd in the courtyard is struck entirely silent. They are paralyzed by awe. They are witnessing the stark, terrifying difference between pretending to be a tough guy to avoid paying for wine and being a man whose physical competence allows him to rob heavily guarded caravans 1,000 miles away. For a fleeting 2 minutes, Ma Jing completely drops the polite camouflage of the rent collector. The iron-faced yaksha is fully unleashed.
He allows his ego, just for a moment, to override his discipline. He allows himself to be perceived in his full, terrifying glory. He masters the space, he masters the audience, and he feels entirely in his element.
Which makes the final moment of this chapter one of the most brilliant, horrifying cliffhangers I have ever read.
It really is.
Because just as Ma Jing finishes this god-tier, awe-inspiring routine, just as he settles into his final stance amidst the dead silence of the stunned courtyard, a voice rings out. The sound comes from the other side of the ruined earthen wall surrounding the temple. It is just a few words, spoken casually in the quiet. Lian de Hao.
Good practice, or well practiced.
A simple, polite compliment. Good practice. But the reaction it produces is completely disproportionate. Ma Jing snaps his head toward the wall, and the text explicitly states that he is instantly paralyzed by sheer, unadulterated terror. The literal translation of his internal state is that his soul leaves his body.
It is a moment of profound psychological shatter.